Listen, self-care only works if you work it. But one of the things that I find so frustrating, and I've experienced this myself, one of the things I find so frustrating is that you have to be in alignment. Your habits, your self-care habits, and the things that you're doing in your life right now, they have to match up, right? You can download all the templates, the little take the screenshots of like the self-care, like little quotes and things you see on Pinterest and all that. But where is that going to get you if you don't actually apply those things and you don't turn it into a habit, right? So you can have a habit, a self-care habit that eventually turns into a routine, but if you're kind of half doing it, it's never going to work. And I'm going to talk about 3 tips that you can start doing so you can improve your self care habits, so you can develop a routine that actually makes sense for you. And one of the things is think about when you first decided that you were going to start implementing some form of self care, right? When was that? When did you clearly define what self care is for you, what that means for you, what that represents? Because if you're kind of half doing some self-care routine and trying to establish some habits from like 4 or 5 years ago, it's like think about how much has changed. Think about how much you've changed over time, right? And so this takes me to the first tip. You have to really look at do the current habits, the self-care habits that you're trying to establish or that you've been kind of half doing, does that even make sense for your life right now? Like, are your self-care habits ashy and dusty and like crunchy? Okay? Because if it is, it's time to clear that up. It's time to clear out like the aspects of what you consider to be a habit or the things you've been kind of doing, even just redefining what self-care means for you. That's going to be so important. We are at the time of this video, we're not too far away from the spring equinox. Spring 2022 is coming, and I celebrate the new year during spring. So I use this time as an opportunity to reevaluate and to just and look at things, look at what's working, look at what's not working. So that's something I want you to start thinking about. First, define what self-care is to you. What does that look like? Not from what people tell you it should be, but how do you define it? What does that look like for you? What do you want that to look like for you? I want you to think about that, right? Then we're going to go into, and based off of that definition, I'm going to go into the first tip, right? The first tip is you need to define your values. And your values are different from your self-care habits and your routine, right? Once you define self-care, then you can start to define what your values are for you personally. And this is all encompassing. So once you define your values, you can use those values to determine how your self-care habits can directly support those values. That's the important thing here. So tip number 1, after you've defined self-care, you need to define your values. That part is really important because if you're just starting to do things and it's not rooted in something deeper, then it's always going to just fall flat. When is the last time that you have really sat down and thought about what you truly value for you as a person, not for all the different roles that you play in your life, not the values that you have for your kids or for your family, not the values that you try to implement at your job or your career. No, for you as a whole being, a whole person, all of you, right? What does that represent? Do your values change over time? They probably do. And this is a good opportunity and a good habit to start forming around self-care. I consider this a good self-care habit of really defining your values and looking at how your self-care habits can reinforce those values. Because when you have that foundation, then it's much easier to get a lot clearer on what you should be doing and what that could look like. So, for example, for me, I'll share one of my personal values. One of my personal values is my own like personal development and really doing the inner work, like understanding myself on a deeper level. That is one of my values. That's something that's really important to me. And what could that look like when it comes to a self-care habit, right? That means if personal growth and doing inner work is one of my values, then now I can create a habit such as maybe I'm focusing on doing personal development workshops. Am I being in one? Any type of journaling work, reading certain books, like meditation, certain things that allow me to connect. And that can vary depending on what's going on in my life, right? What would that look like for you? If another value is for me is optimal health, right? So what self-care habits could I apply that directly supports that value? And let me know in the comments, what is a value that is important to you? Are any of your current self-care habits reinforcing that value, or is it taking away from that value? Because sometimes we're doing things and we don't really know why we're doing it. So optimal health is another example of a personal value. So when it comes to making sure that I'm doing things and like listening to my body and honoring rest and wanting to nourish my body in a way that allows me to thrive, moving my body. So this can show up in a lot of different ways. But now that helps shape that value of optimal health, really helps shape the habits that I can start implementing to reinforce that. So I hope those examples were helpful. So let's go into the second tip. When it comes to a habit that you need to start implementing so you can improve your routine, you really have to look at like what is important in your life right now. What season of life are you in? I talk a lot about seasonality. And I even have a podcast episode, I think it's a 2-part episode on my podcast. And I'll be doing an updated version on that soon, talking about like honoring the season that you're in. What season of life are you in? I operate by the seasons. How you operate and work, right? Seasons, quarters, whatever, right? Whatever your timeline and flow is, what season or phase of life are you in right now? What you value or what needs to take priority in the summertime might be very different from what needs to happen in the fall or in the spring, right? So, for example, if your goal is to if one of your values is let's say professional development, right? You really wanted to focus on your career, but it's summertime. And during that time, you're typically, there's more vacation time, or depending on the type of job you have. And that's usually when you're wanting to travel or do other things, right? Maybe you have kids and the kids are home from school. Maybe that's not the best time to prioritize the professional development in a way that you typically would maybe in the fall or during a certain phase of the season, right? That doesn't mean you can't implement focusing on habits that support that, but maybe it would look different. There might be a different priority based off of the season that you're in. Maybe it's more family time that would need to come into play. Maybe it is more travel. Maybe it is just more rest, being out, moving your body, being in the sun because of the season that you're in, right? And the seasons, when I say the season that you're in, that doesn't only mean based off of, spring, summer, winter, or autumn. It can be just a certain phase in your life. Maybe you're starting school. Maybe you are leaving the country and relocating completely, right? So it can vary, but this should be a habit that you are incorporating as a part of your self-care routine. Sitting back and looking at, well, what is actually what's going on in my life? Like, what am I doing? What is about to happen? What is going to happen? So this is something that I think about. I'm thinking about these things now as we're getting ready to approach the spring equinox. Why? Because I operate in seasonality, and I look at, okay, well, what's happening? What's shifting? What do I need to? What am I flowing into? What do I need to let go of? What do I? Because that it's all about priorities. And sometimes where I see people get stuck is you're trying to implement certain self-care habits that really don't make sense for what's going on in your life at the moment. There are going to be times where you need to hustle, you need to like put in some extra work. There are going to be other times where you have additional rest or additional time to kind of like take it easy and be low key. There's are going to be times where you need to do a major purge, and there's a lot of things you need to let go of. So it just really depends. And so that can really help shape like what things can look like, but also what matters for the actual for a specific time frame. And this brings up another thing about seasonality when it comes to self-care. Doesn't have to be this you pick this one thing and then it lasts forever. No, like your self-care habits can change and adjust and expand. They should grow with you and evolve with you. And this is why the seasonality aspect is important. So that's tip number two. The first tip I shared was about defining your values. So your values can help shape and determine like what habits can actually support your values. That should be something that's really important. And the second tip is really sitting back and identifying what season of your life that you are in, because that's going to help you prioritize your self-care habits so you can eventually develop a routine. Now, notice how I'm saying self-care habits, right? Habits are these things that you do, and then the totality of those habits, and that creates the routine. Does that make sense? So we're not talking about, oh, I took a nap, hashtag self-care. No, we ain't talking about that. Not saying that self-care can't, taking a nap can't be part of self-care, but what's the bigger connection with your values, right? If it's honoring your body and listening to your body, and when your body is saying, I need to rest and I need a nap, and that's the result of it, that's the end result, then absolutely. Does that make sense? But you have to really dive a little bit deeper and look at those connections. So values, seasonality. Okay. The third tip. Now, how often do you sit back and actually plan out the things that you want to do for yourself, especially when it comes to self-care? And I'm not just talking about for that day. Like what that's going to look like overall. Tip number three is all about assessing what is currently working for you. If you already have some self-care habits or a self-care routine already in place, what is currently working for you and what's not working? What doesn't make sense? Because if you think back to the first tip, I talked about defining your values. So think about the things that you already have in the works, if any. If you don't have a self-care, any self-care habits established or a self-care routine established, then hey, this is a great like starting point, a clean slate. But really, it's a clean slate for anyone, right? Doesn't matter. Start to assess what is currently working for you. What things have you been consistent with? And then also start looking at what no longer works. Like let some of y'all need to leave some of these self-care things that you're doing alone. Like it doesn't even make sense for you right now. Like stop. Okay, like put it on the shelf, save it for another day, or you're doing some watered down version of something that you saw on Pinterest. Like stop. Okay, like really look at what has actually been working. But if you think back to what I shared, and for those of you that are just tuning in, I talked about defining self-care. So you might not even know, as you're like assessing what is working for you and what's not, you might not even have a clear understanding of what you're actually doing and what would be considered self-care, because you've never actually defined self-care. What does self-care mean to you? How do you define it? What do you want that to look like in your life? It doesn't have to be how you define self-care, doesn't have to be how I define self-care. And that's the most important thing. And this is why defining it is so important. Because then you're knowing like what goes where. What's actually something that is just a part of a daily, just what you do day to day, versus like something you're dedicating to your own self-care. And here's the thing, there's a lot of guilt that is often associated with self-care, because it's like, oh, well, you're selfish. This is something you're just thinking about yourself. But really, self-care is an investment in yourself. And you're going to hear me say this a lot. Okay. Self-care is an investment in yourself, and it also allows you to be better in every other area of your life. So when you start looking at self-care as a personal investment in your future self, a personal investment in your mental health, a personal investment in your physical and emotional well-being, like in your spiritual growth, like it's an investment in that. And when you start to look at it that way, it can really help you change how you actually integrate it in your life. And then you can start taking these habits that you're wanting to form and start actually building a routine. Because these habits, there's like just, sections of things that you're doing, and you're building up the endurance, you're building up the resilience. So it can just become this automated part of who you are and like how you flow throughout the day, throughout the weeks, throughout the months. Then it becomes a routine, but it's something that should be a part of your life, not just in meaning self-care, right? Self-care should be something that's just a part of your life and how you care for yourself. Because listen, at the end of the day, who's going to take care of you? You have to be able and be willing to invest in yourself and to take care of yourself more than anyone else is willing to do. And by taking care of yourself, I'm talking about the inner work. I'm talking about like asking for what you need, right? It doesn't mean that you have to do it all by yourself. So let's just get that clear. I'm not talking about just do it all yourself. Oh, like nobody can help you do anything. No, I'm not talking about that. It's like really prioritizing the things that you need, the things that you want, and the things that you desire, which all links back to your values. What is important in your life? What is important for you? What's important for you overall, and what needs the most attention right now, especially with this upcoming season. And if you're watching this video and it's the middle of spring, and you could be preparing for summer, or whatever phase of your life, it doesn't matter. But I want you to think about that and really start to consider self-care habits as these personal investments in your future self, in your current self, and really looking at how doing these things can actually enhance every other area of your life, every other role that you play in your life. Well, it will only enhance those roles. It will not take away from it. And yes, this might mean that you need to establish some boundaries. This might mean that you need to say no to people. This might mean that you need to say not yet to people. Some of y'all need to say hell no to people. Okay. Okay. But some of y'all need to say hell no and block them. So some of y'all need to block some people. Okay. But At the end of the day, it's allowing you to reinforce your values. So you might need to take a moment and do the legwork on the values first, which is why that was the first tip. This is all about just restructuring it all, okay? And this is just part one. I'm going to be doing a self-care series as we're leading up to the spring equinox. So if this is something that's important to you, if this is something that you know somebody that is really wanting to prioritize their self-care, wanting to change things, wanting to improve their self-care habits and develop a routine, or even just update your current routine, then this is the opportunity to do that. Definitely share this series with them, because I will be talking about this for a little bit, for a while, because this is an important time, right? At least for me, like I mentioned, I'm all about seasonality. As we're preparing for spring, these are the things. These are part of the habits that I have. As we're preparing for a new season, I start to look at my values and reassess. Like, okay, well, which values are in alignment? I mean, what habits do I currently have that are in alignment with my values? Which ones have I been slipping on? Right? What things make sense for the season that I'm going into? What do I really need to prioritize and focus based on this upcoming season or phase in my life? And sometimes the phase could be a week, sometimes the phase could be 3 months, sometimes the phase can be a month, right? So again, season can vary, and leave that up to your own interpretation. And yeah, and then going into looking at what's already working, what's not working. The things that aren't working, stop doing them. Like, why are you doing them? Or why are you even holding on to? Because some of y'all are holding on to the idea and the thought of it, like, oh, I should be doing that, oh, I should be doing that, but you're not actually doing it. So you're just holding on to the thought, and you're just embodying guilt. Like, stop doing that shit, please. Let me say that one more time. Some of y'all are holding on to the idea of self-care habits. You're not actually applying them. You are just harnessing the guilt of the not doing it. And that's the habit that you formed. Right. Somebody's feeling that in their spirit right now. Okay. But do you see what I'm saying? Like, let all that go. Clean the slate, like clear all of it off. Stop holding on to the ideas of things and start actually applying the things. What are things that you are actually wanting to do? It's time to just stop thinking about the doing of it. How long are you going to keep doing that? It is time to start investing in yourself. It is time to start prioritizing your needs, your wants, and your desires. It is time to start making decisions. And if you didn't catch the video that I did a collective reading for the spring equinox, then definitely check that out if you're interested. If you're into tarot, it was a collective tarot reading, and I broke all of these things down about what is important about this overarching theme for spring. And it's all about decisions. It's all about like connecting with self. Like, so, and because the more that you connect and understand self, the more you're able to put yourself out there, collaborate with people, be in community. So even though self-care is about you, it's about so much more. It's about who you get to become in the process. Because then you'll have the energy to do so much more. And I'm on a mission to just like, for personal optimization of like humanity. Okay. So with that, like, what are the things that you are just have been being really crunchy and ashy about when it comes to some of the habits, when it comes to your own self-care, when it comes to allowing yourself to receive, allow yourself to just feel things. to have space to just allow yourself to sit with your thoughts and your feelings so you can start to articulate what actually matters to you. It's so easy to be on like on this like automated loop of what other people tell you that you should believe. It's very easy, right? You can listen to all these things and feel like, oh yeah, do it this way and do it that way, and oh, this is how you should do it. It's like, and you can be like, yep, yep. And you can agree with it. You can agree, but agreeing doesn't mean that it's in alignment with you and what you truly need and who you truly are. Then the underlying aspect of that is, do you know who you are? That is an ongoing journey and process. So bonus tip here is, like, the more you start to do this for yourself, the more you actually are creating the opportunity for you to learn who you are. You are not who you were in 2018. You are not who you were in what 19 I'm trying to like think of a number, 1992. You're not who you were then. That's not who you are now. That's still a part of you, right? That got you to where you're at now. But who are you going to be in 2042? Who are you going to be in 2025? Do you see what I'm saying? So, and it's easy to kind of stay in the loops that keep us in who we were versus moving us into the present of like who we are now, who we are becoming, and who we want to become, because you can choose that. But in order to do that, you have to start connecting with who you are. You have to start listening to yourself, learning things about yourself. And you're not going to, like, I say this all the time, you are with yourself your whole life, but you don't know who you are. You're still learning who you are. And it's through experiences, it's through doing things and not doing things. It's through connecting and that you get to explore those different aspects of yourself. And the question is, are you ready to do that? Self-care habits and these tips that I shared, like for you to improve what you're doing. This is all about improvement. It's the whole point of this video, improving your habits and how you are defining things. It's time to up level the thing. Stop doing all like stop. I'm over the ashy, crusty, crunchy, outdated self-care templates and all that. I'm over it, right? It is time to dive a bit deeper. It is time to really look at like what you're doing and what you're not doing. So let me head over to the comments. Greetings. I forget at times that self-care can be simple and not over the top extravagant. Yes, it really can be very simple. And the sooner that the more that you align your values with it, then it's like, yeah, it doesn't have to be this long drawn out thing. It can be as easy as saying no to people. It can be as easy as like, you know what, I want to have more time to learn about who I am, just to connect with my own thoughts. So I'm just going to I'm just not going to have certain things on to like keep me distracted all the time because it aligns with your values, right? It's a lot easier, and it's easier to simplify when you are really clear of what that self-care habit is supporting, What is it reinforcing? Because your habits, all habits, whether they are linked to your self-care or other habits that we have, right? We have habits that don't serve us in our best interest too, right? So for any habit that you have, what is it reinforcing? Are your habits reinforcing procrastination? Are your habits reinforcing you manifesting abundance in your life? Are your habits reinforcing, like, think about your goals and think about what you're doing. We all have the habits. We all have habits, right? So it's not that you are not, we're all capable of forming habits. And it's about, well, what is this leading me to? Wanda, welcome, welcome. It's nice to see you. I hope you're well. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for being here. Emily, love that. It's about who you become in the process. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what, I feel like just a lot of things are so surface level, at least the things that I see. And there's nothing wrong with that, because some of those things are very applicable at times. But it's like when it comes to improving what you're already doing, like, you need to go deeper so you can understand some of those things that seem a bit surface level, like what that actually means to you. So, if it's a bubble bath, I'll see these, like, self-care bubble bath things. Yeah, that is one of many aspects of self-care. But what is the bubble bath doing for you? Like, what does that actually represent? Does that represent reducing stress? Is this like a spiritual bath, and this is part of your spiritual practice, right? Is this an opportunity? Is that when you like to connect with self, and you like to just really take that time to think, right? And just not be distracted. Because then it makes sense of, like, okay, this is why I'm doing it. You're not doing it just to, like, post some picture on Instagram of your bath. Not that those pictures aren't great, but it's like, okay, like, what are you actually, what does it mean? And how does it align with your values? And this is where, when it comes to the habits that are not serving you, this is a very easy way for you to start letting certain things go. Because all you have to do is ask the question, is this in alignment with my values? And the next question is this something that I should be prioritizing based on the season or phase of life that I am in right now? Should I prioritize this? Where should this be on the list? Where should this be? It really helps make the decision-making process so much easier. And so I mentioned, I do this every season. That's why I'm talking about this now, in hopes that this can help. And I hope that you all are finding this helpful. And just take some time to really think about what you need and what you want and what you desire. Because those are all, like, different things. And self-care isn't only about what you need. It's also about what you want and what you desire, and who you're wanting to become, right? So it's not about, oh, well, I need this because I'm always stressed out. It's like, well, no. Well, do you want to be a person that's not stressed out? Do you want to be a person that's traveling the globe? Do you want to be a person that is, that wants to start a family? Like who do you want to be? Do you right? Do you want to start a business? Are you wanting to improve your health in some way, or just stay healthy, right? Just be energetic, like, just feel present instead of groggy all the time. If you're wanting that, then what would that look like? And that part is so important, to just remembering that you can step into that version of yourself. That version of you exists, and it's possible for you. And this is just one way for you to start moving into that version of yourself. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. Like I mentioned, I'm going to be doing a series on self-care, and this is part 1 of the self-care series. So be sure to stay tuned and let me know in the comments if you have any questions, or if there's anything in particular about self-care that you're wanting some more insight on, that you want to see in a future video. Definitely let me know. And if you want to, one video that I can refer you to, and I will pin this actually in the comments while I'm thinking about it. I did a video about keeping promises to yourself. I think that would be a really good resource if you're at a point where you are always saying things that you want to do, but you're not actually doing them. That could be a great resource for you. So I'm going to share that in the comments here. Okay, let me share that. And here we go. And be sure to stay tuned for next week for part 2 of this series. All right. I will see y'all on the next one. Bye.